So you want to start a water bottled company. Sounds like one of the easiest businesses on the planet. It's water. It falls from the sky for free. Fill a bottle, slap a label on it, sell it for $2, and watch the profit roll in. That's the plan in your head, and on the surface, it looks almost too simple to fail. Walk into any convenience store and look at that wall of water bottles. Dozens of brands, all selling essentially the same clear liquid, and you think, how is anyone losing money on this? Here's the problem. The thing you're actually selling has almost nothing to do with what's inside the bottle. A bottled water brand isn't really a water business. It's a marketing and logistics business that happens to use water as the product. And once you understand that, the entire economics of this industry, the parts that make some brands wildly profitable and quietly bankrupt others, finally start to make sense. Let's start with the part that surprises almost everyone, which is what the water itself actually costs. For a standard brand using municipal tap water that's been filtered and purified, the raw cost of the water itself is close to nothing, often just a few tenths of a cent per bottle. Even for premium brands sourcing from a natural spring, paying for the extraction rights and testing the water can add real cost, but it still typically comes out to only a few cents per bottle. So right away, you have to accept an uncomfortable truth about this entire industry. The water is almost never the expensive part. The real cost starts with the bottle itself, and this is where a lot of first-time brand owners get caught off guard. A basic plastic bottle, cap, and label combination can cost anywhere from 8 to 20 cents, depending on the size and the plastic resin used. That might sound small, but when your water is wholesaling for maybe 40 to 60 cents a bottle, the packaging alone can eat up a third or more of your entire cost before a single drop of water goes in. And if you want a distinctive bottle shape, something that actually stands out on a shelf next to 50 other brands, custom bottle molds alone can cost $50,000 to several $100,000 just to design and manufacture, purely for the shape of the container. Then comes the bottling plant, and this is where the real capital requirement shows up. Building or leasing a facility with commercial bottling and filling lines, the machinery that cleans, fills, caps, and labels bottles at meaningful speed, typically requires anywhere from $500,000 to several $1,000,000 in equipment alone before you've hired a single employee to run it. Many new brands skip this entirely and pay a co-packer, an existing bottling facility that will produce your brand under contract, but that comes with its own cost, usually somewhere around 10 to 25 cents per bottle just in production fees, plus minimum order requirements that can run into the hundreds of thousands of bottles for a single production run. That means before you've sold a single bottle to a single customer, you may already be sitting on an inventory commitment worth $50,000 to $100,000 or more. Now here's the part of this business that quietly determines whether a brand lives or dies. And it isn't the water, the bottle, or the factory. It's the shelf. Getting a new water brand onto the shelf of a major grocery chain or convenience store isn't as simple as showing up with a good product. Retailers routinely charge what's called a slotting fee, essentially rent paid just to occupy a few inches of shelf space. And depending on the chain and the region, that can run anywhere from a few $1,000s to tens of thousands of dollars per product per store region. And that's just to get on the shelf. It says nothing about whether the bottle actually sells once it's there. Retailers track sales velocity closely, and a brand that doesn't move fast enough gets quietly removed to make room for something that does, regardless of how much was spent to get it there in the first place. This is exactly why marketing spending in this industry looks completely disconnected from what you're actually selling. You're not really competing on taste, because in blind taste tests, most consumers genuinely cannot tell the difference between one brand of water and another. You're competing entirely on perception, on the story the bottle tells before anyone has taken a single sip. This is how a bottle of water sourced from a spring can sell for 2 or 3 times the price of a nearly identical bottle sourced from filtered tap water, purely because of how it's positioned, packaged, and marketed. A premium water brand can spend well over $1 per bottle sold on marketing, advertising, and brand building, on a product where the actual water and packaging combined might cost 30 or 40 cents. That gap between cost and perceived value is where the entire profit of a premium water brand actually lives. Distribution is the next hidden cost, and it's a bigger one than most new brand owners expect. Water is heavy, and heavy products are expensive to move. A truckload of bottled water might contain thousands of bottles, But because water is dense, you hit the truck's weight limit long before you hit its space limit, meaning you're paying full shipping costs to move a product that's mostly transporting itself in liquid form. Regional distribution deals, warehousing, and the fuel cost of moving heavy pallets of water across a country can add another 10 to 20 cents per bottle to the final cost, which is a huge percentage of a product that might retail for $1 or $2. Now let's talk about margins in plain numbers, because this is where the two very different versions of this business become obvious. A basic municipal-sourced water bottle might cost 15 to 25 cents total to produce and package, sell wholesale to a retailer for 40 to 50 cents, and retail to the consumer for $1 or slightly more. That leaves a real but modest margin once you account for distribution and the slotting fees needed to stay on the shelf. A premium spring water brand, on the other hand, might cost 30 to 50 cents total to produce, but sell wholesale for $1.50 to $2, and retail for $3 or more in the right setting. A hotel minibar, an airport terminal, a high-end restaurant. That premium brand is operating on a dramatically higher margin, but it's also spending a dramatically higher share of that margin on the marketing required to convince someone the water is actually worth the price difference. There's also a seasonal and behavioral pattern here that mirrors almost every subscription-style business, just in a single purchase form. Bottled water sales spike hard in the summer months, during heat waves, and around emergencies like storms and natural disasters, when people rush to stock up out of genuine necessity. Retailers and brands plan their entire production calendar around this surge, because a brand that runs out of inventory during a summer heat wave loses shelf space to a competitor almost overnight, and getting that shelf space back afterward is far harder than losing it in the first place. Let's talk about the regulatory side too, because it's a cost most people never think about until it hits them. Bottled water is classified as a food product in most countries, which means it's subject to regular testing for contaminants, proper labeling requirements, and inspection standards. A single failed test, a contamination scare, or a labeling violation can trigger a recall that costs far more than the value of the product itself, both in direct costs and in the reputational damage that follows a brand for years. And increasingly, plastic packaging itself carries a growing regulatory and public perception cost. Several regions now impose specific taxes or fees on single-use plastic bottles, and environmentally conscious consumers are a growing enough segment that brands ignoring this shift risk losing shelf space to competitors offering recycled or reduced plastic packaging instead. So how does a bottled water brand actually make money? In plain mechanical terms, revenue comes from wholesale price times volume sold, minus the cost of water, packaging, bottling, distribution, slotting fees, and marketing. For a basic brand competing purely on price, the entire business lives or dies on volume and efficient distribution, because the margin per bottle is thin, and the only way to make real money is to sell an enormous number of bottles as cheaply and efficiently as possible. For a premium brand, the entire business lives or dies on marketing effectiveness, because the margin per bottle is generous, but only if enough people can be convinced the story behind the bottle is worth paying extra for. Put it together over a full year, and you get two very different outcomes depending on which one of these two businesses you actually built. In the strong scenario, distribution deals land well, a hot summer drives volume, and a premium brand's marketing story lands with the right audience. A well-run water brand can post healthy double-digit profit margins and genuine brand loyalty that compounds year after year. In the rough scenario, a slotting fee negotiation falls through, a mild summer softens demand, and a larger competitor undercuts on price at exactly the wrong moment. And that same brand can find itself sitting on unsold inventory, still paying warehouse fees on pallets of a product that, unlike almost anything else on a store shelf, has a genuine expiration date.